Welcome to the first edition of CEO Corner for 2010. I'm Otis Rawl, President and CEO of the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, and I'm happy to have with me today Darrell Scott, our Vice President for Public Policy. The legislative session starts today. It's the second year of a two-year session, and the Chamber will have a bunch of issues that were left on the table from the previous year, as well as new issues that we need to work on to further the business position in South Carolina. Darrell, let's talk a little bit about what we left on the table. I know we left Save Our Secret ballot on the table, passed the House and then the Senate. Let's talk about that just a minute.
Yes, sir. Save Our Secret ballot's a key initiative that we've introduced here in South Carolina. It's a nationwide piece of legislation that's meant to combat the Employee Free Choice Act that's coming out of Washington, D.C. That bill passed the House last year with 89 votes. It's currently passed the Senate Judiciary Committee on a vote of 17-2. We feel very confident that it should pass early on the Senate session with the bipartisan support. That bill basically protects the rights of workers to cast a secret ballot. It changes the state constitution in South Carolina to do so.
Well, I know that an issue that we've worked on nearly all summer is reforming the Employment Security Commission, looking at the unfunded liability that we will have as far as businesses having to repay monies into the system to cover the people that have been unemployed. I think we're looking at least a $2 billion deficit that is going to have to be addressed in that fund. What has been the talk around ESC reform over the summer?
Right, as you mentioned, we've worked on this issue, the Chamber has, since about 2005. We've seen numbers from the trust fund account declining fairly rapidly. I think we closed out 2009 with right about a $700 million deficit that we have to repay to the federal government. But right now, both on the House and Senate side, there are reform efforts moving forward that you'll probably see some restructuring, but you also see some reform in how benefits are paid out, i.e. Benefits most likely will no longer be paid out for misconduct or voluntary quits. That's payouts that have been probably about $500 million over the last 4 years. So a significant amount of money that we've paid out that we probably should not have paid out.
Well, I know another thing that goes to businesses' bottom line is tort reform and tort cost, along with the cost associated with producing products from litigation and things of that sort. I know we got a comprehensive bill back on the table for tort reform. You want to talk a little bit about what's encompassed in that bill?
Yes, sir. We passed tort reform several years ago. We've come back trying to get some more initiatives passed. Right now we're ranked 43rd according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in civil litigation climate, which 43rd not being a good number, if you will, but some good things, some common sense things like caps on non-economic and punitive damages, but other initiatives like the admissibility of a seatbelt in automobile accidents. Feel like we've put a very fair bill forward. The Speaker's introduced that bill in the House and wants to move that early in the session on the House side. Obviously, we've continued to work on the Senate side, but Senator Larry Martin has hosted a number of subcommittee hearings on that piece of legislation this year, and hopefully we can move that forward in the Senate Judiciary Committee early in the session.
Well, I know that at least from the medical community standpoint, defensive medicine practice is a large portion of what a lot of hospitals saying are driving up the cost of health care. I know Ingo Engelmeyer with Spartanburg Regional says as much as 30% of healthcare costs is directly related to tort cost and defensive medicine. So big issue as we move forward. Another issue I think that's hanging out there for us that we're seeing some dramatic increases is in property taxes. Act 388 is implemented now. We're in the third year. We had budget deficits at the state level. Sales tax revenues did not come in, strain on local governments. Tell us what we're seeing from our small businesses and our other businesses in regards to what Act 388 is meaning to the business community.
Well, obviously you've seen the sales tax, the 1 penny, not meet what was originally projected. I think it was projected to produce about $500 million. Last year it produced right around $450 million. All that time, property tax getting more and more expensive, property tax relief, and you've seen that number grow by $30 or $40 million every year. The tough thing with this issue is with 12% unemployment, as the economy starts to turn around, those small businesses, those folks that are going to create those jobs around the state. It's going to be tough. The property tax structure that we currently have is a real disincentive to create that new job or open up that business on Main Street. And we need to do what we can to educate the members of the General Assembly of its effects. But like you said, we're seeing increases in millage rates all across the state.
Well, I think the real issue that brings all this to bear is how we develop our state budget and how we come up with a revenue forecast. And it looks like the revenue forecast in the last few years, we've just really missed it. We've talked about trying to stabilize how they forecast revenues in the state. 4 of the legislative leaders came out with op-ed in the last couple of days talking about reforms, which are very good when you start talking about the General Reserve Fund, the Capital Reserve Fund, what they're trying to do. But I think one step's missing, Darrell. You want to talk about what we believe is that one step that needs to be reformed?
Yes, sir. Like you said, we support the General Reserve Fund increasing the amount we put in that from 3% to 5%. But one of the other things, as you mentioned, we've missed on budget projections over the years. And what we've talked about is either one of 2 things. One, a proposal by Senator McConnell to create a stabilization fund and cap state spending. But the other side of it is to reform the actual projection process and cap what we can go from one year to the next on budget projections. So both of those are common sense reforms that we hope that we can move forward in the General Assembly this year. Obviously, with revenues down 25% from its high water mark in 2007, there are some things that we need to do to streamline that process.
It sounds like you got your plate full, and the Chamber's got a lot of work to do in this legislative session. So thank you for joining us on this week's edition of CEO Corner. We'll start the session off this week, and hopefully we'll have other leaders of the state talking about issues that are relevant to the business community and its bottom line in creating jobs and wealth for our citizens.